Do you still have a Facebook page? I can't seem to get rid of my Facebook page because I'm part of a subculture where the median age is like 45. I've gone through many phases in my life where I've wanted to delete the app, but I just could not bring myself to. I've had just the events app, I've had just the Messenger app, but I can't seem to get off of Meta platforms. And it seems like that is intentional, that all of these apps and social media platforms are owned by the same person, Mark Zuckerberg. Recently, Zuckerberg made a video announcing that they would be changing some of the policies on Facebook. One of those policies being their policies against hate speech. And naturally, a lot of people were upset about that. And frankly, if I cared more about being on Facebook, maybe I would care a bit more about it. As some of you guys know, my Facebook page was hacked and stolen from me, and Facebook didn't really seem to give a fuck. But what I didn't understand at the time is their attitude towards me was more reflective of their attitude towards their creators in general. In fact, while they couldn't get my page back, they seem to have been able to create an AI that is both black and queer that I guess will make the content that I make, but better, I suppose. I don't really know. Still don't really quite understand the purpose of that if it's not just to screw creators out of getting opportunities on Meta. And of course, screwing the working class is a huge part of Mark Zuckerberg's entire business plan. He's one of many people behind the TikTok ban, which is taking away jobs from millions of people around the country, a lot of whom pulled themselves out of poverty using the app. I wanted to make a video watching his recent interview on Joe Rogan, where he seems to be trying to put across the impression that he's just like us. And I decided to film it because you quite literally could only pay me to watch this interview. But I am getting ahead of myself as per usual. Hi, my name is katblaque, and I like to think that I make content for introspective hot people. And if you're here, I'll assume that's you. And if you're brand new here, you know exactly what to do if this video pleases you. Click my button and join us right here on the channel. So after receiving some feedback in my last video, like last time, I wanted to do my makeup for this video because I am on my way to the golf club, and I'm a huge fan these days of saving time and energy. Now, I do feel the need to preface this video by saying that I am someone who is still on Facebook, but I understand why a lot of people no longer are. Facebook for me used to be an important platform for me professionally. My page, by the time it was deleted, had 182,000 followers, which I guess doesn't sound like a lot of followers, but I would reach 4 million people per week. Mark Zuckerberg recently came out and said that there will no longer be fact-checking on there. And a lot of the protections against hate speech, frankly, no longer exist. These websites, they shift their political alignment based on what is gonna benefit them the most. You know, I've been in this game for a really long time. I have been making content on the internet for a very long time, and I do not have any illusions about my position on these websites, because I know that at the end of the day, these companies want to make money. These companies, their bottom line is money. For a certain period of time, it benefited Facebook to pretend that they were a website that cared about diversity. And what I think is interesting about what Facebook is modeling in this moment is that Facebook is sort of showing its hand. They're showing who they actually are and where they actually really stand. I don't think that's a bell that can be unrung, so to speak. I don't think that we're ever going to be able to look at Facebook and see them in the way that we once did. And you know, the thing about Facebook is that so many people feel they can't delete the app because of what Mark Zuckerberg is doing. A lot of people, they no longer want to be on Facebook. They want to leave these platforms behind. I have kind of divided feelings about that in this exact moment, purely because Meta is still a way that I have been able to connect with people, and a really big part of what I do is trying to be there so that people have representation for people like me, and I feel sort of conflicted about giving up that space and ceding it to hateful folks, but at the same time, I understand why people wouldn't want to feed into it. So I have very rarely heard Mark Zuckerberg speak. So this is also going to be really interesting for me. I will start out by saying that this is a very long interview. I'm not going to watch all 2 hours and 50 minutes of it, but I will watch it for as long as it takes for me to finish my makeup. And we will comment on at least as much as that. When I was thinking about watching this interview, I was like, I need to sit down and film myself watching this interview because I need to get something out of this. I need to benefit from it in some way because at the end of the day, there's really not much I personally have to gain from listening to the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. We can have lots of interesting commentary about it, but at the end of the day, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world are gonna Mark Zuckerberg, right? So it kind of is what it is, but I wanted to kind of have this space as a place for us to talk about this because increasingly we are having less and less places to speak freely and openly. Social media companies bowing down to Donald Trump is very concerning to me because as someone who is aware of things, I just know that a lot of what Donald Trump says is propagandistic and not true. And it's unfortunate to see how many people have fallen truly for propaganda. Trump is trying to push all of these other social media platforms into propagandizing spaces for Trump. So it's kind of bizarre to observe the way that things are shifting right now because a president really should not have that much power. A president really should not have that much control over our ability to freely speak. And the fact that he's in bed with so many of these billionaires who are invested quite literally in our oppression and disenfranchisement, all the things that he's doing right now, to me, communicate very clearly that he does not care about this country, right? Who he's nominating for Secretary of Defense doesn't express care or love for this country. What it tells me is they want to destroy this country. They want to divide us. They want to make us hate each other. They want to make us fight each other while we are all forced to give the few men at the top all of our money, while women are forced to have children so that these men can continue to have slaves to work in their factories so they can continue to leech from society. It's disgusting. It is something that is very disgusting. And I know that the reason why they want to get rid of TikTok is because we are talking about this right now. We are seeing class solidarity more than we've ever seen it before. I've seen the way that social media has shifted and changed. It's insane to reach this point and recognize that social media is one of the big battlegrounds right now for our society. It's kind of crazy to recognize. So that will be on my mind when I am watching this interview. Now, I think an important thing to think about when you hear him say this is that Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook as essentially a website where you could rate the attractiveness of women on your college campus. That is where Facebook started. So when he says he wants to give people a voice, it's important to give context to the fact that he started from the foundation of trying to give lonely, rejected nerds who hate women a voice. And I say who hate women because that's kind of required for you to even entertain the very premise of starting an app that ranked the attractiveness of women as though that is a value system for them. That attitude only comes from a hatred of women, this inherent objectification of them and narrowing down their value to how much you would like to have sex with them. Now, of course, that's something that we do. A lot of us have this type of bias, goes in multiple different directions, sure. But when it comes to the way that women have been treated in this country, well, women have been oppressed, largely because of their sex. So it's very important to understand that when he says this, his foundation is misogyny. Now, Facebook was able to grow and mature into something other than that. It became something that we all use essentially as a replacement for an address book. But at its core, that is where it started. And it would not have gotten to where it is without that. And the same is true for quite a bit of our technology. The first JPEG was a scan of a Playboy playmate. There's a lot of technology that only really has been developed, frankly, because men wanted to objectify women. This is one of them, and it's not a coincidence that he's joining sides with a man who's convicted of rape. Anyway. So I kind of want to give context for some of this because I was there. I was on the internet back then. I think that a lot of people right now may have forgotten that our algorithms used to function very differently. Right now, you are able to silo yourself into a limited group of people who are generally in agreement with you, right? In the before times when things used to be a little bit more mixed, quite frequently creators like myself would experience a very large amount of harassment. Very, very large amount of harassment. And of course, this harassment was always conflated with disagreement. People often thought that because they disagreed with some of the things that we said, whenever we talked about harassment, it would just be, us describing a disagreement. But in all reality, it was pretty fucking vicious. I mean, it was getting doxxed. I dealt with rape threats, death threats. I received a bloody pad in the mail. I had a stalker for many, many years. At a certain point, dealing with harassment, dealing with the bullshit comments was like part of my job. Some people may remember there was a time on my YouTube channel where a lot of my content was kind of centered around that. And it wasn't really the fact that people were disagreeing with me. It was more so that people were threatening me. It was a very frustrating time to be on the internet. It was a very, very frustrating time to be on the internet. There were a lot of times where people like me would try to talk about racism and we would be censored. That was really one of the main reasons why I stopped using Facebook, because it felt like at a certain point, I actually couldn't talk about racism. And so I started seeing Twitter as the place to do that many, 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 many years before Elon Musk took it over. And obviously that has shifted. And what's a little frustrating to me about Elon Musk's specific view of all of this is, what did Musk do with Twitter? He went in being like, oh, there's a bias. There's a bias against the right. There's an intentional suppression of content from the right wing. So he got on there, he decided to unban several far-right content creators, and now when you go on there, you see an overwhelmingly right-leaning bias. I think that something that's always been kind of rough for conservatives is that they like to argue that a lot of what they believe is true, but a lot of times truth doesn't actually end up leaning on the right. Like right now, Mark Zuckerberg is getting into bed with people who are white nationalists. There was a time in this country where we pretended that something like that was concerning, something to be not so happy about. But now we sort of do this whole song and dance about how, well, maybe he has his reasons or yada, 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 blah, 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 when it is simply true that we are seeing the same patterns that we saw in 1930s Germany. The truth often does not land on the right. I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a person who believes that people on the left are perfect. Watch half of my videos. You will definitely hear me criticize people on the left, probably more than you'll hear me criticize people on the right. But right now, it's kind of like frustrating to even listen to people act like they care about the truth, because I don't think that Zuckerberg cares about the truth. I think he cares about getting paid. I think he cares about what may come to him if he doesn't side with Trump. And I know that this is going to sound kind of like condescending, but something I've thought about recently is, I think because I'm educated, I can listen to someone like Mark Zuckerberg and I can see through a lot of what he's saying. There's a lot of people who listen to Elon Musk and probably don't catch it because they just believe that these men are great and anything that they say is probably also great. When I watch this video and I listen to kind of like the way he's projecting and I like see the way he's dressed and things like that, personally for me, I see a nerdy dude who has always wanted to be part of the boys club, has always wanted to be accepted by people like Donald Trump. And here he is, he's got his opportunity to be part of the boys club. I see that so clearly with Elon Musk. Right? These are men who may be good at some things, but they're certainly not good at projecting themselves. And so it's interesting how when a man makes money, people often forget that he doesn't have other qualities. A lot of people who focus specifically on STEM don't really have a lot of understanding of the social dynamics of things or the way that cultures are created or established. So they have this way of being very, 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 very dismissive of those things. It ultimately reveals that they don't have as wide of a command of things as people often believe they do. So here's really the issue that he's having with the fact checking. I'll give you an example of a very commonly fact checked thing online. The Holocaust. There are people who think that the Holocaust did not exist and that Jewish people inflate the numbers of the amount of people who died during the Holocaust so that they can receive unfair, undeserved privilege in this society. That is something that people genuinely believe and speak about and make content about. And it's something that would commonly be fact-checked on Facebook because there are huge white supremacist groups on Facebook. And of course, there are people who feel that way, who are white supremacists, who do not want for that to happen on their post. They don't want for fact-checking to appear on their post because obviously it sabotages their message. Those are the people who did not accept it. You know what's frustrating to me about this is we know factually that Facebook was used to spread misinformation about COVID. There are people who quite literally died, and they died because they got their information from a Facebook page or a Facebook post about what they should do during COVID. What aggravates me about the way that some of these billionaires talk about this shit is that at the end of the day, they're really not upset about the vaccine. These dudes have the vaccine. They are upset at the fact that the pandemic impacted their business. They're upset at the fact that it slowed business down for some of them. They're upset at the fact that it interrupted their commerce. And it's also frustrating listening to them talk about this as though COVID didn't kill millions of people, as though it wasn't actually something that was dangerous. I've had COVID 3 times, I think. It was fairly mild every single time I personally had it, but for other people, it killed them. And the thing about this for me is that there's such a heartless attitude in ignoring the way that you being irresponsible about COVID can impact someone. Maybe you get it and it doesn't hurt you, but you can give it to someone for whom it can kill. And then people get into this attitude of, well, the people that it will kill are old, or, the people that it will kill are otherwise undesirable. You don't even hear the crazy, disgusting violence in that at all. Like, it's truly bizarre. It really, really is.
It's so complicated, this system, that I could spend every minute of all of my time doing this and not actually focused on building any of the things that we're trying to do. AI, glasses, like the future of social media, all that stuff. So I get involved in this stuff, but in general, we have a policy team.
Also, do you know what's funny to me about this too? The future of what, dude? Every AI thing that this guy's put out, every metaverse thing that this guy's put out has not done well. There's all of this attempt at innovating technology for products that people don't really want. And I have an Oculus Quest. It was a really fun time until it got bought out by Facebook. Right? They removed one of my favorite apps, AltSpace, which was all about creating your own virtual world. And it used to be such a fun app to socialize on. I met so many people on that app who I still talk to this day. And they took it away. One of the most connective apps on the Oculus. They replaced it with Facebook bullshit where everything is paywalled. It's not nearly as open as it used to be, and you have to have a Facebook page in order to use it. There are so many things that virtually force you to have a Facebook page. And I remember when Oculus switched over to Facebook, I was really aggravated by that because I didn't want to have my Facebook page tied to my Oculus, which of course has all of my health information on it. This vaccine shit's going to really set me over the edge because maybe I'm alone in this, but several of the schools that I went to required vaccinations, and their attitude was, if you didn't get this vaccine, you can't come to this school because we want to protect all the students here, so you can't come to our school and spread a disease. It's not going to happen. And I know that Mark Zuckerberg probably went to very similar schools. So it's kind of like, why are we now acting like vaccines are this untested thing that nobody knows about, that there's no reason to believe has a functional purpose? Like, it's so bizarre because there are so many diseases that have been mitigated because people got vaccinated. And we observably know that to be true. But now you're trying to act like it's a truth conversation about whether or not vaccines work and if people should post on Facebook that they don't work. And again, these people definitely got vaccinated because they know that vaccines work. And that's another thing that frustrates me about these billionaires. It's always the rules for thee, but not for me bullshit. These people are smart enough to know that education is important, and they're smart enough to know that it's important that the things we see on the internet are actually true. Now, I think if someone wants to post online, oh, vaccines don't work, maybe they should be able to. But at the same time, why are we acting like this is true? Why? Seriously, why? So, yes, I've had COVID 3 times, but I was also vaccinated. So my experience with COVID was probably not as bad as it probably would have otherwise been. I don't know. It's just really bizarre to listen to him talk about this like it's a conspiracy theory. And it's crazy. Oh, it's so annoying hearing them talk about this because that's what they're doing to TikTok. Like, literally. No, it's important to point out that a lot of the people in our government who are trying to ban TikTok right now have stock in Meta. This is the shit that I don't like about politics. And I'm going to say that Mark Zuckerberg is doing politics because that's what he's doing. Mark Zuckerberg is very aware of the fact that the platform that he is lobbying to get rid of also is being censored because of the information that they share. He's very, very, very aware of that. Coming on here and making the same exact argument that you could make for TikTok while talking about the pandemic and the impact of the COVID vaccine is pretty crazy. Because one thing we do know factually is that people died because of COVID. Most of us were fine, but why are the people who died from COVID somehow not valuable enough to want to protect? And this is the attitude. These billionaires put profits over people every single time. They're willing to let us all die so they can make a few more bucks. And it's frustrating to me to listen to this dude who is cosplaying a working class guy, acting like he actually cares about what the people have to say, knowing that he is part of the censorship of people on TikTok. It's kind of insane. It's kind of insane. It's so disingenuous. Many of the things that he is saying about the government, about the way that the Biden administration reacted are very much things that could be said about himself and about Trump. It's really crazy to listen to someone talk about this knowing that we're about to enter into fascism. It's possible that maybe things won't go that way, but as Elon Musk bans people from Twitter who disagrees with him, Donald Trump gets people into the government who are loyal to him, who are unqualified for the job, and these social media companies continue to bow to him. It's so ridiculous to act like you're invested in equity. And that's the thing that's really annoying to me. These people want to act like what they're trying to do is something other than give their side the upper hand, right? That's exactly what Elon Musk did when he bought Twitter. He was like, oh, we're going to make it fair for everyone. And what ultimately ended up happening? Well, these fringe far-right accounts ended up getting promoted more than everyone else. And no matter how much they may have wanted to say that they were on both sides or whatever, it just became very clear that that was not actually the case. It became incredibly clear that they did not feel that way. So it's so ridiculous to pretend. I know that there are people who are watching this and they don't have an awareness of the way that he actually moves. They're not aware of the fact that he is saying some of the very same things that could be said about TikTok. They're not even on TikTok or paying attention to TikTok. They're just listening to the narrative that is presented to them and taking it at face value. And it's frustrating because they're silencing people like myself who want to come on social media and actually tell you guys what's happening. These billionaires do not care about people. Like Mark Zuckerberg has a vaccine. He knows that vaccines work. He just doesn't want to alienate what is frankly his largest base of support on the website, old racist white people who voted for Trump. He needs to come out and say that this is something that he feels and has felt. He has to make it seem like Biden is responsible for the way that vaccines were rolled out, even though that happened under Trump. He has to act like that because it helps him sell his product. I dislike Mark Zuckerberg for the same reason I dislike most politicians. They speak out of both sides of their mouth and they change their narrative based on who's giving them money. So here's what's interesting about what he's saying here. So there's been no mention at all. So there's been no mention at all in this video about TikTok so far. And what's funny to me about that is that TikTok actually has been outpacing Facebook. And at the end of the day, Mark Zuckerberg is upset by the fact that TikTok as a company is so successful in America. He's upset by the fact that TikTok is a big platform where a lot of us gather, a lot of us speak, and many of us have left Facebook entirely. What's not being discussed here is that while there may be a lot of people on Facebook, for a lot of people who use Facebook, the only reason they're on there is their actual friends that they have in their daily life, the people that they actually know. For a very long time, Facebook has struggled to have a growing user base. Facebook, for a lot of people, is like the old person website. I use it because it's where I find all of my goth events. And after many, many, many years of building connection and community with people in Los Angeles, it is where I connect with everyone at the same time. Right now, I'm using it to speak to a lot of my friends about the fires that are happening in Los Angeles. It's just a very useful platform for me to connect with a bunch of people at the same time. All of that those reasons for me being on Facebook are not at all on his list of things to do in order to improve the website. He wants to do all of these other things that people don't really want. Younger people are not signing up for Facebook, and banning TikTok is not going to get them to sign up for Facebook. And at the end of the day, the only reason why he's doing what he's doing is because he wants for Facebook, an American company, to have more power in this country. That's why a lot of people are boycotting Meta. They want to show him that we're not all going to jump over to Meta just because you blocked TikTok. And I think the thing that the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world haven't really calculated is the fact that because you guys have made social media so unpleasant, because we can't go on Twitter anymore without seeing white supremacy, or now Facebook anymore without seeing white supremacy, and because, TikTok is no longer a thing, the reaction is not going to be us being more on social media. It's going to be us leaving social media, getting off of social media entirely. Now, I, of course, think that that's the goal. They want to remove these channels of communication from us. But I know that at the end of the day, the people that are watching this on Joe Rogan's page, they don't really get that. Yeah, because he did a fucking insurrection. Oh my God. Like, it's so funny to me how at this point people have accepted that the insurrection happened and just was a thing, and they treat it like it was just not a big deal. It's crazy because these people claim to be so patriotic, but they don't understand that the image of people going to the Capitol and, breaking in and talking about like hanging the vice president, like that's not something to be proud of. And it was right for Twitter at the time to take him off of the page because he was inciting violence. These guys don't like government interference. They don't like government interference, but they do actually. Because I don't know if people understand this, but it wasn't a normal thing for the president of the United States to have a Twitter page that he then would share with the next president of the United States. That was not really a thing. That was not quite a way that this worked. It works like that now because the government have become intertwined with social media. Now, if Donald Trump was a simple user, not the president of the United States, and he incited violence, he would get banned from the app. If I went on Facebook and incited violence, I would get banned from the app. But because the person who incited the violence was a president, somehow, some way, that's supposed to be not as bad. It's supposed to be somehow acceptable. And that's kind of the insanity I'm talking about. Like, why do we accept that as just something that exists? Like, why? There really isn't a good reason to. The only reason to really suddenly shift the way that we would do this is because you are, frankly, on your knees, mouth open, poppers at the side, ready to be taken over by someone who doesn't and never has liked you. But you like it that way, don't you, you dirty bitch? It's one of those things where... Sorry. It's one of those things where I don't understand how you don't see it. I think the government probably shouldn't be intertwined in our social media. I would agree with him on that. But the government is intertwined in our social media. TikTok is getting banned because of our government, because our government wants to control the information that we have. And the reason why he's rubbing shoulders with Donald Trump is because Donald Trump is going to be in control of these apps. That's the reality of it. The reality is that Mark Zuckerberg is not going to deny Donald Trump's orders. If Donald Trump says, we shouldn't have this on there, all of this conversation about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, a freedom from being censored by the government goes out of the window because his guy wants for this post to get removed. It is quite literally the same exact thing that you're describing Biden doing. Biden says, I don't like this post, you should remove it. You would do, and you do it. It's crazy because you're talking about the same thing. The same thing is going to happen. And if you don't believe me, just wait. Like, we'll come back. I make enough of these videos to always have an I told you so moment. You guys will notice I haven't really been doing that because there's just been too many real, very upsetting fucking around and finding out situations around this country. But like, you're not going to hear this now. You're not going to get what I'm saying now. But under this administration, when Meta starts to limit our freedom of speech, when Meta starts to limit the content that we post that is opposing to Donald Trump, I want for you to remember that he said this, that his issue with Biden was trying to control the content that was being posted on there. And some of you will turn around and say, but he said all these years back that he cares about freedom of speech. But no, because they don't actually care about freedom of speech. They've never cared about freedom of speech. They care about money. They care about money. They care about their ability to continue to make money. So freedom of speech has never been the focus of any of these platforms. That's another aggravating thing about some of the discourse we have around this. We can talk about how these websites are not beholden to the same standard of freedom of speech. But like, at the end of the day, while these websites may frame themselves or present themselves as freedom of speech websites, really, they're websites that are trying to make money. There are websites that are trying to make an income. So at the end of the day, they're only as invested in your freedom of speech as much as it's able to make them money. And saying that they support everyone just gets a large group of people to feel like they are going to be accepted on the platform. That's just what it is. It's all about selling to as many people as possible. Every one of these social media pages speaks out of both sides of their mouth just like that. So at the end of the day, a lot of this is facetious, but people aren't going to see that until it's too late. You're going to see him do exactly what he's talking about, frustrating him under the Biden administration. Trust me. Here's my thought about community fact-checking. I actually think that in so many ways, in a lot of different contexts, it's probably a better system, right? The problem I have is that there's a lot of people, I would even argue a majority of people, who would just deny what's true about me, right? Like, I can acknowledge that I'm a transgender woman. I can acknowledge that my biology is different from a cisgender woman, right? I can acknowledge that some of my experiences are different than a cisgender woman, right? I can totally accept that, totally see that, totally observe that, right? What's being shared a lot on Facebook is akin to everyone who has an experience of gender like mine is a rapist, is a pedophile, right? That deserves to be challenged. It doesn't deserve to flourish. There may be a majority of people who feel that way, but that doesn't then make it true. I don't become a rapist because you don't like my gender, right? But that's the way that a lot of people talk about trans people. Most transgender people are not trying to play sports. Most transgender people have a very clear understanding of their biology. Most transgender people are not assaulting people in the restroom. They're being assaulted in the restroom. That's not something that most people agree with, though, right? There's still a lot of ignorance around transgender people. That's why misinformation is so dangerous. Because if someone can say that my experience with gender is akin to pedophilia, that means that someone could just murk me and suddenly it becomes okay because, well, they saw on Facebook this truth that was, confirmed by multiple people that that's what it was, right? And it's funny because a lot of these people have an understanding of stuff like this when it's their friends committing sexual assault, right? Like, a lot of people have a reason to think that all these stories that get posted need to be verified and this and that and need to be fact checked or whatever. But when it's a minority that people don't tend to care that much about, you know? And the reason why I'm saying that is, like I said, I've seen so many posts on Meta that were very clearly fake stories written to upset people that flourished, that got millions of comments on it, right? So many people all coming together to share in their hatred of transgender people, hatred that will inevitably turn into violence, right? So just because the community may all agree to attack the same minority doesn't then make it true. Not to mention that obviously when you create a space that isn't accepting to queer folks, obviously we're not going to be there to join the chorus of people fact checking, right? So it's one of those things that, it's really aggravating. And I know that for MAGA, their ideal is to never interact with people like me, like never see people like me, never have people like me come up into their feed at all, right? Never have to acknowledge that someone like me exists and lives and has a life, right? Like that is their dream, right? So it's aggravating to act like it's not a really common thing for people to just decide that someone does not exist, that their experiences are not valid, and that their identity isn't valid. And I really think that sometimes the people who don't get this are just not on the receiving end of it ever, right? Like something that I used to deal with all the time on here, even though I would make these videos talking about how I felt about things and going into detail about it, I would constantly interact with people who would make content about me but would lie about what I said. Like outright just lie about what I said. And then the thing that they lied about, which of course was upsetting and got them a lot of attention, would then become the truth. And then I would have to be engaging with these people in back and forth conversations in my comment section where they're so convinced that I feel a certain way about something purely because someone was able to get a lot of engagement on their lie, right? It's kind of crazy because if you can entertain that happening in the context of COVID, why can't you entertain it in the context of human rights violation? Why can't you entertain it in the context of like civil rights, right? Like it's very obviously an issue on Facebook. Facebook has a huge issue with racism and misogyny and transphobia, and he just gave all of those people the green light to double down on all of those things. Very commonly, my experience on Facebook, and one of the reasons why I stopped really using it, is my shit would get automatically hit, and there would be times where I would be maybe referencing what someone else said and I would get hit for that. If I even quoted someone who said something hateful, I would get hit for that. There was a lot of my content that got hit specifically because I was someone calling out racism and using certain language within that context. Their AI systems are not very sophisticated. And he spoke a lot about the use of bots and things like that. If you go on Facebook right now and click on almost any popular post and read the comments under that post, you will see that there are an endless amount of bots. They're doing a lot of what he is describing too. They're engaging with content. They're making that content often move up in the algorithm. Sometimes these bots are created by the people who own the page as a way of artificially promoting the page. And that shit is rampant on Facebook. It is a huge issue on Facebook. I don't really think it's gotten better, or at least I haven't noticed it getting better. It's a massive problem with a lot of the content on there. Bots are ever present on Facebook. It's one of the reasons why I don't really love the app. What he just described is something that should not happen. You shouldn't have your WhatsApp account disabled because Facebook owns WhatsApp and requires you to have a Facebook page. What's funny to me about the way that he talks about social media, and especially kind of throws shade at social media in other countries, is that, you know, a lot of other social media pages don't work like that. And that actually ends up being way better for the user. People don't want to have a Facebook page so that they can use other apps. That is probably one of the clunkiest ways to do it. If people can't communicate with each other because AI decided something that they posted on their Facebook page didn't pass the sniff test, that's a problem. That is an issue. And it's crazy to listen to this being described as a positive thing, because social media doesn't actually need to be that complicated. You should just be able to have your Facebook page and also your WhatsApp account. Anyway. Now, keep in mind that terrorism and its definition are going to shift under this administration. They're already talking about describing people who support Palestine or people who have shown support to Luigi Mangione as terrorists. They're already talking about that. So basically what he's kind of saying here is if the government decides that you are a terrorist, that gives them free range to look at your messages and to keep you from messaging people. I wanted to point that out because I really do feel like that's something that people are probably going to miss when they watch this. It would be nice to believe that in the next administration, we're still going to be able to come together and advocate and speak to each other openly about what's going on around the world and what politics we believe in. But it's very important to note that they are trying to define discussions of unpopular things as terrorism. And something I really want to point out at this section of the video is that if you're someone who, like me, uses Facebook Messenger and uses Facebook Messenger a lot, Facebook Messenger has access to information that you might not understand they have access to.
I used to work in IT. I worked in IT for like 13 years, and I learned a lot about data privacy in that time, and social media and apps, and what apps are notoriously bad when it comes to data privacy. And at the very top of the list, the worst offender, the worst app for data privacy is Facebook Messenger. Not Facebook, not Instagram, not Threads, Messenger. And I've seen a lot of people say things like, oh, I got rid of all of my stuff from Meta and Facebook except Messenger because I have a group chat with my family. Or, oh, I got rid of my Facebook account, but I kept Messenger because that's how me and my work colleagues communicate. Bro, that's the worst one. Like literally the worst one. All that other stuff that you got rid of and deleted does not matter if you keep Messenger, because that is the worst offender out of all of them. So let me just explain this to you. If you have Messenger on your phone and you don't have any other apps by Meta, you don't have Facebook, Instagram, Threads, nothing. If the only thing from Meta you have on your phone is Messenger and you connect to a Wi-Fi, Messenger makes a map of that Wi-Fi network. It collects information about every single device that is connected to that network. So every phone, every computer, every tablet, every printer, every camera, every thermostat, every smart TV, every Roku device. And on every single one of those devices, they're collecting the name of the device, the IP address of the device, what type of device it is, whether or not your device has access to that device. And this doesn't just happen on your home network, it happens on every Wi-Fi network you connect to. So your friend's house, your parents' house, your place of employment, Here's one, your child's school. If your child has Facebook Messenger on their phone, and then they connect their phone to their school Wi-Fi, that app is collecting data about their fellow students and about the faculty. And it's a lot more information than just, oh, there's 200 devices connected to this network. No, it's detailed information about every single device. Like, here's a mobile device connected. Oh, it's an iPhone. It's titled Jeremy's iPhone. It's running iOS version blank blank. Its IP address is blank 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 blank. Its MAC address or its hardware ID is blank blank blank. And by the way, the term MAC address has nothing to do with Apple. It's just a term used to describe the hardware ID that every single network connected device has. It's kind of like a serial number. And not only does Messenger collect all of this information about every single device on every single network that your phone ever connects to, but they also collect a crap ton of information from your actual phone. Like the names, phone numbers, email addresses, and social links of literally everyone in your contacts, or your location history, or your browsing history, or a detailed list of every single app that you've ever installed. Oh, you think your passwords are safe? You think a fingerprint or a Face ID is going to protect all of that information from Facebook Messenger? Spoiler alert, it's not. Downloading Messenger means that you consent to their terms of service. You give consent just by downloading the Messenger app. Using the service and downloading the app gives consent. Consent for your phone to be used as a data collection device, to collect data about every place you go and every person you're in contact with. So if you find yourself in the mood lately to get rid of your Facebook and your Instagram and your WhatsApp and all of your meta stuff, don't forget about Messenger. In fact, make Messenger a priority. Because out of all of Meta's apps, Messenger is easily the worst one.
It's again the rules for thee, not for me shit. Yeah, I get what they're saying, but are we okay with sock puppet accounts or do we not like them? Because if the owner of these apps are using sock puppet accounts, that seems like a good reason to continue doing so. You know what's funny about the whole concept of losing your job because you posted something unpopular online? That is the thing that keeps a lot of people from being openly political about the shit that they believe in. One of the only reasons why I'm able to talk about the shit that I believe in is because I have been my own boss for most of my adult life. I agree with what I believe in politically, so I'm not going to fire myself. But if I was in a situation where I needed to pay my bills because of the company that I worked for, I would be in a situation where I had to make sure that I didn't openly oppose the things that I believed in opposing. That is a very interesting thing to think about in this particular context because they're definitely going to be silencing dissent on Facebook. Right? Again, a lot of you guys aren't going to agree with me on this particular point right now, but we're going to see it happen. And like I said, when it does happen, he'll be there ready with open mouth, accepting everything that Trump gives him. That's just kind of what I know will happen, especially based on this podcast, right? And you know what's so funny about that is well adjusted. That is well adjusted. You don't need to post your incredibly racist joke to an audience of people. The only reason you want to do that is because you want to build an audience around that racism. I don't know why people act like people can post these things and not feel that way. It is very well adjusted and normal to choose to share your humor, especially a sense of humor like that, with a small group of people who care about you, who know you, who respect you, and understand that you might not mean something bad about it. What's become really aggravating to me about a lot of people who post on the internet. I'm about to go on a bit of a rant for a second. A lot of people, I guess, didn't get the same note that I got when I was younger, which is that things that you post on the internet last forever. Now, you may see me post things that you would not post on the internet, but I've been posting on the internet for a very long time. There's a part of me who's already kind of accepted that. I change my mind all the time. I shift how I feel all the time, and my content tends to reflect that. But I'm very aware of the fact that the things that I post on the internet can potentially have consequences. And the interesting thing about the Trumpian side of the internet is that they seem to feel like the things that they post should never have consequence. Like Donald Trump inciting an insurrection on Twitter should not have had consequence, apparently. Twitter should not have removed his account. But would he have posted it on his page if he didn't want an audience? If he didn't want to whip people up into frenzy and then do what they ultimately did? Probably not, right? The goal of that was because he wanted to build a community around that anger. A lot of people act like social media companies punishing them for the things that they post is somehow something that should not have happened. I've had a lot of my shit pulled offline. And for the most part, I've understood why it's happened. It's interesting to listen to people talk about this stuff in this way because you really don't need to make that post. And I really wish more people felt that way and thought like that. Recognize that they don't actually need to post that. They don't actually need to share that. They don't actually need to be a bigot publicly. And it doesn't matter that you laugh at it. It doesn't matter that it's a joke. Maybe you just don't need to share that. And people get on this whole thing about, oh my God, I'm being censored or whatever. Are you being censored, or are people responding to what you're posting? And maybe what you posted is something we've agreed shouldn't be here. When I started to understand what Twitter was turning into, a alt-right hellscape, I left. Because I don't really need to stick around for that. It's aggravating to me that we're at this point in society where people can sit around and talk about how people need to start taking more responsibility for themselves. But these same people bitch and moan about cancel culture, which more often than not is just someone receiving the repercussions of the shit that they did. Again, it's rules for thee, not for me shit. If you posted something heinously racist on your page, whether you're anonymous or not, and people don't like it or respond negatively to it, that is people responding to an action that you did. If you would like not to experience that, maybe don't post it. I post everything online, accepting that there will probably be a large populace of people who see it who don't like what I have to say. I don't know why it's so hard for other people to not see it that way. This is aggravating for me to listen to because, again, I had a Facebook page of 182,000 people. It was hacked, and they could do absolutely nothing to help me. It was so ridiculous. So listening to this, I know you don't actually care about users. If you don't care about someone who's built up a Facebook audience, you don't care about the tiny person who's just bitching and moaning on Facebook. Not really. So why pretend? Well, I know why, because it helps people think that they can come to the website. These people don't give a fuck about you. And I hate listening to these motherfucking billionaires pretend that they give a fuck about you. These people would not piss on you if you were on fire. These people would walk right past you if you were homeless on the street, hungry and struggling. These people turn their backs on people every single day. They exploit people every single day. They don't care about your freedom of speech. They don't care about your freedom of expression. They care about their freedom to make money. That's it. Now, I don't know if you've kept up with any of the confirmation hearings happening right now, but girl, it is a fucking travesty. I mean, these motherfucking clowns that they have lining up to take these positions in our government do not know what the fuck they are talking about or doing. And it's aggravating for me to watch, because how do you motherfuckers listen to this? And how do you think that they give a fuck about your country? You know, one of the things you deal with when you're a Black person is you constantly have people insinuating that you are never going to be qualified for anything, constantly. And it's fascinating listening to all of these people who bitch and moan about DEI, complain about inclusion, and say that certain people aren't qualified, who spent a lot of time talking about how Kamala Harris, who has served in every branch of the government, and again, I'm not a Kamala Harris fan, is unqualified. But then you listen to them interview these nominees, and they don't have qualifications. They come to work drunk. They're belligerent. They disrespect people. And then you have to listen to Republicans talk about them like, oh, you know, everyone makes mistakes. Like, they're able to see and entertain this premise of imperfection and shit when the person looks like them. When the person looks a bit like them, they're able to maybe entertain that maybe this person isn't qualified, but they are loyal. And that's never going to be a good enough parameter for a person of color unless it's working for the favor of white supremacy. The only context where they will ever see a person of color as qualified is when they're shilling and shucking and jiving for them. Like, that's it. Facebook does not actually need to be a place where people debate whether or not women have value. You know, it doesn't need to be a place where they do that. But clearly he wants it to be. You know, I know that the reason why, again, they're doing this is all to bow down to Trump. It's all this is. All this is bow down to Trump, you know, listen to all the shit that he's got to say. You know, that's it. That's it. Bow down, praise him, whatever. Anyway, see, here's what's aggravating me about this too. And you know, the thing about this is it's something that that actually makes me sad. There's a lot of people right now who bought into Trump's bullshit. And in the coming years, they're really going to see, in a way that they cannot ignore, that the people who were criticizing Donald Trump, the people who were calling him out, the people who were saying that he is a fascist, were not wrong. And as these billionaires center themselves and make it so that few of them are at the top, they monopolize most of the things that we have. Every moment of our life is monetized. From the moment that we wake up, we're giving money to, you know, the Bezos and Musk and Zuckerberg. Like, their ideal world is one where every waking moment of our lives is monetized, where community is stripped from us so much that we feel like the only way we can actually have it is if we pay a subscription fee. These people are going to, I think, bring in a time of pain in this country that most of us have never lived through. Some of us have, but most of us have never lived through. And I think in the coming years, there are going to be a lot of people who regret their vote, because it's clear when I talk to Trump supporters that they believe what he's saying. And the reason why I'm sad about it is because as someone who has paid attention to history, as someone who has been part of a lot of these conversations and observed a lot of these trends, I know that he's lying. I know that he is relying on people's destitution and fear right now. There are certain things that he says that are specifically phrased to trick people into voting against their own rights. A lot of people didn't understand that Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act were the same thing. Now, why did he call it Obamacare? Because there's a lot of people who don't like Obama. Why do a lot of those people not like Obama? I mean, there's lots of reasons not to like Obama, but there's a group of people who don't like that he's a black man. They don't like that his name is Obama, which is a different name than a white Christian name. And so they hear Obamacare and they hear Kamala, these non-Eurocentric words, and they hate it on the principle of it not being that. So he was able to utilize people's racism so that they would vote against their access to care, and that will only demonstrably hurt them more. And there were people who woke up recognizing that that shit was happening, who were suddenly like, oh my God, wait a minute, I just got rid of the only thing that was making my medicine affordable to keep me alive. I don't feel happy when I think about stuff like that because it's sad. And it's what politicians have done. It's what rich men have done for many, many, many years, for decades in this country. President Lyndon B. Johnson said, if you can convince the lowest white man that he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him somebody to look down on and he'll empty his pockets for you. Politicians and rich men have always known that if they give people a scapegoat, they will not even care about the fact that they're also giving up their rights. And we are going to see that in a huge way right now. Trump and his ilk want to convince you that it's the immigrants. And so many people voted for him thinking, well, immigrants have had a negative impact on me and I don't really like them and their language and their culture. And maybe we do need to secure a place for the future of the white children. And so they voted, and then they're shocked that, as it turns out, we need some of those brown immigrants because those are the ones that we can legally exploit who also have the ability to give us technology that will make our country competitive. One of the reasons why I have such a disdain for this particular interview is these tech bros know that their companies do not flourish without exploitation. They know that the H-1B visa people, the value that they bring to the country is the fact that they are workers who have a lot of skill, who they can essentially exploit because the only way that they stay in the country is if they're willing to work for that company. Something that I am trying to draw attention to is the fact that in the coming years, we're going to see the return of slavery in an overt way that we can't ignore. We're going to see these mass deportations not go the way that they're planned, and then suddenly these people are going to be moved into camps that, of course, will then be used to do labor. And in our country, we already do that with inmates. We already have the 13th Amendment, which allows imprisoned people to be the only class of people who can technically be enslaved. When immigrants are seen as criminals in this country, that puts them into a position where they can be used as slave labor. And as they start to peel back even legal immigration, that's only going to get worse. There will become a class of people for whom always exist in perpetual slavery. As these companies become more popular, they're going to start owning the land that we all currently live on. The money that we spend on our rent, the money that we spend on our food, the money that we spend on our necessities, and the company that we work at will, at the end of the day, all be tied back to these few billionaires who may not overtly be enslaving us, but have kept us in a position through monopolies where we are constantly just handing them all of our money, where our money never really ever gets to circulate between us. We are perpetually in a situation where we no longer are able to make enough money to feed ourselves, and the money that we spend will always go back to these billionaires. This is the natural result of monopolies. This is the natural result of what they're trying to do right now. And you know what? I will be very happy to be wrong about this, but I do not think I am. I truly do not think I am. And I think that as we start to enter into this era, we should be aware of the fact that these billionaires require exploitation. There is no such thing as an ethical billionaire. There isn't. So here's what's really dishonest about this. Here's the thing that really frustrates me about this section of the video. I think it's very true that people will start to trust online creators a lot more than they do the mainstream media. I think for some of us, that's been the case for a very long time. I mean, I have not been a fan of the mainstream media for a very long time. Before Donald Trump was saying fake news, I was already not huge on the mainstream media. But what people don't understand about a lot of right-wing influencers is just how heavily funded they are. I mean, and sometimes these creators are funded through their audience, but even that has a really steep gap. I'll never forget checking the Patreon of an anti-feminist creator who used to post on here. I don't know if he still does, but he's pretty consistently, from what I've seen, made upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars through Patreon every month. I've never even surpassed 10,000 on Patreon per month. For some of these creators on the right, they get paid that for making one video or making one mention of a product on a podcast. Now, in comparison, I used to work for Everyday Feminism. I got paid $75 for every video that I made for Everyday Feminism. I currently post videos on Nebula, and I make under $100 posting my videos on Nebula. I don't make a lot of money from these companies. Most of the money that I make is through Patreon and through you guys. But people on the right, creators on the right, have a very, very, very different experience because there are so many more people willing to pay them. And not because their content is more accurate than mine, not because their content is necessarily better than mine, but because their content forwards the ideas that they want to be forwarded. Ultimately, their content is promoting capitalism. Their content is promoting people like Mark Zuckerberg. This interview is meant to make Mark Zuckerberg, a billionaire, seem more relatable. It's all about showing deference to power. And that's why people are more willing to throw money at creators on the right. A lot of people also don't understand that there are companies that very intentionally pay content creators online to specifically make culture issue content.
I have to whistleblow on something. Why? I have surgery tomorrow. This app might be going somewhere, and everybody else doing so has more to lose. Many have remained anonymous, and so I'm going to co-sign it with receipts. Okay, let's go. I had a video go viral a couple months ago, and with that came a lot of different opportunities. And one of those came from somebody, this person, like verified celebrity, talked to them. That's what happened. And it was basically saying that they were looking for creators specifically on this app, that this was going to be their target audience, and I had their demographic. And basically what they were saying is places like CNN and other news networks were, just kind of trying to get news out on this app from people that had established accounts. And basically that I would never have to take an assignment that I didn't want to do. I could just pick from a list of topics and share my thoughts. That was not the case. It's important to also understand that this is invite only and that there was like a long onboarding process. The other thing to understand is with these campaigns, you get a very small summary and you can't really see what it is until you register. The pay is good, about $5,000 to $6,500 per video. The name of the app, it's Urban Legend. It's Urban Legend. I'm just going to tell you, I will put receipts up at the end. And if you were to publish on this app and then also there, basically you would get a certain reach. I don't know how, if they just have accounts that watch it, that push it, I don't know how. When I clicked on these, it was all the usual suspects on the far right. Really looking for people right before that popularity contest we had in November. The things that they wanted me to cover were awful. The first one that set me off was it basically was picking subjects that you could tell that there was some overlap with the left and right. So for example, it was keeping women's sports for women. And I would only have to use a few keywords, right? Because this is important for indoctrination. I could say whatever I wanted, but I had to use these couple phrases. And I was fuming. I went back to this person and was like, what the fuck? I will not be doing this. This is highly, highly unethical. I do not know how I would have gotten chosen for this. But again, and what I'm about to say next, I'm saying more, is that I also had the impression that they were looking for left-leaning and middle-of-the-road people, not only to cover these mid-range topics, but to keep the focus on constant domestic issues. And that perhaps you would be privy to news maybe before other... And so I'm telling you what happened, but I'm also telling you the feeling that I got, okay? And I think that what is going to happen next is that in fascism, it is very important to manufacture problems and then solve those fake problems so that you don't have to solve any real problems. We talked about this before. And so I suspect that on the 19th, if anything were to happen, I could see Trump in some capacity saving, albeit altering the app. I'm not sure. And then we are going to see left and moderate creators that are saying, I don't agree with him, but I think it's really great that he did this. And explaining at this time that I had this opinion that there were going to be roles cleaned, given some of the things that they wanted us to talk about. Another thing that I will say is that after this happened and I said no, that particular video here could not be shared again by anybody. And what's odd is it would continue to get comments and likes. I got a whole bunch of inboxes saying I can't share this, I can't do anything. Also from there, I went from anywhere from 50,000 to like 1 million views on videos to 300 to 400. And I do not suspect that that is because of TikTok by any means, but all apps have a vested interest in having a certain amount of each content out, right? So we saw a bunch of Luigi Mangione and then it went dark for a reason. And so it isn't that I think that I could have been suppressed so much as that maybe other people covering the same genre had a leg up in terms of having an apparatus to push their videos forward.
There's a lot of people who go to college for whom college is the very first time they break away from their mostly white, mostly conservative community where they are amongst people who tend to agree with them. So now these people are in college and they're interacting with trans people and they're interacting with people of color. There are groups and organizations that mention race and gender and it makes them uncomfortable. And some of those people may end up needing to work with or be friends with people who are different from them. And so the process of those people breaking out of their shell, breaking out of their bubble, and actually interacting and engaging with people is often seen as grooming that happens on the college campus level. I mentioned this in a previous video, but there are college campuses around the country right now that are removing what they are describing as DEI language from their courses because it's all about making it so that people who go away to college, for example, don't get a introductory to feminism course like I got. They don't want for people to understand history or what this country has been. If you listen to a lot of the arguments against TikTok, they say shit like, we don't want for people to develop an anti-American perspective through the content that's posted on TikTok, which is so funny because one of the things that you will recognize if you do go to college and you do take a history course is that so much of our history is propagandized, right? Like you will probably learn in school that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, that Abraham Lincoln was some sort of anti-racist because the abolition of slavery happened when he was president. But what you won't know is that Abraham Lincoln said this: "I am not, nor have I ever been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. That I am not, nor have I ever been in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermingling with white people. And I will say, in addition to this, that there is a physical difference between the white and black races, which will ever forbid the two races from living together on terms of social and political equality, insomuch as they cannot so live while they do remain together. There must be a position of superior. I am as much as any other man in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race." Your propagandized history that you get in middle school and in high school will teach you that Abraham Lincoln was this great freer of slaves. But in truth, he felt like this. In truth, the Civil War was not about freeing slaves. It was about the North trying to cripple the South, for whom slaves were a huge part of its economy. And the South, for a very, very long time, has been struggling because of that. And so there are indeed a lot of people who are invested in maintaining white supremacy in this country. And that is indeed the reason why many people voted for Donald Trump. This desire to always maintain the superior position. And it's aggravating to even entertain this conversation about this shit, because we do actually know that when you normalize hate speech, it turns into violence. It turns into genocide. That is the reality of what's happening. That's the reality of why hate speech on Facebook is so goddamn dangerous. And really what Mark Zuckerberg is saying in this is that he is going to allow it. That when it does get that bad, he will do absolutely nothing. I totally get that people who are watching Joe Rogan probably don't get all of this. Like, if you've already been lulled over to accept all of this, like, you're obviously not going to get it. But it's aggravating because I know he gets it. I know he understands this shit. He's just really expecting for y'all not to. This is a PR thing. Again, I know that a lot of you guys aren't going to hear what I'm saying right now. You know, I've discussed this already, but I have been yelling out into a void for a very long time online about all of this shit. You know, all of this shit I've talked about at length for a very, very long time. And what I do know is that a lot of you don't care. You know, or you think that I'm paranoid or I'm making it up and it's a conspiracy theory and all this other shit. When I did my video many, many years ago about the rebranding of white nationalism, so many people called me a conspiracy theorist. Now we are quite literally empowering people who grew up in apartheid South Africa, who have histories of being racist, who are also from families who felt very similarly to Abraham Lincoln. I don't feel good perceiving these things and knowing that no one gives a fuck. It's honestly really, really hard. It's really, really hard to understand that this shit's gonna happen and most people aren't gonna see it until it's too late. It really is. Like, right now, I'm able to come to you guys and share how I feel about this, but I know I won't be able to forever. That's something
Which is another argument for anonymous accounts. I think you should have anonymous accounts. I think you should be able...
The fact that we have so many issues in this country, so many of us are struggling, so many of us are destitute, so many of us are in debt, and our government could not come together to address those things, but suddenly could come together to ban TikTok. It is literally insane. Literally. It is one of the craziest things I think I've ever heard. Absolutely ridiculous. It really shows you where their priorities actually are. It really shows you who they actually give a fuck about. And it's not you and I. It's not the people. And it's not America. That is the thing that if I survive all of this, I will always look back on and find utterly fascinating. These people don't give a fuck about America. They don't give a fuck about this country. They don't give a fuck about this world. They do things every single day that show that. very clearly. If America goes down in flames, they are going to get on their spaceships and leave us all behind. That's the reality of it. They have to trick you into believing that they actually care about you. They have to trick you into believing that they're just like you, when in all reality, they look at you as nothing more than a cog in their machine, nothing more than a peon to be stepped over or used. It is one of the most baffling things to me that people don't see this. But at some point, you're not going to be able to ignore it. Anyway, our education system is propaganda. We are taught a certain way so that we walk away with a favorable view of America. And I understand why that is, but especially when you're someone like myself who's marginalized, you feel that the bullshit of, oh, slavery's over, so therefore racism is over, is a lie because you can feel how people treat you. You can feel the way that people interact with you. You know that that's bullshit. Aggravating. And the ban of TikTok is really about keeping that propagandized version of history. You know, it's not a coincidence that they don't like TikTok and they also don't like college institutions that would teach them the real history of this country. It is not a coincidence at all. The reality is, if a lot of us learned the truth of this country, it would be very hard for us to be proud of it. That's why they're trying to change how we learn about slavery. If we have unflinching education about the violence of white supremacy, well, some people might believe that white supremacy is a bad thing. So we have to downplay it and we have to shift the narrative a bit so that people like Abraham Lincoln, people who believed ultimately that they were always going to be superior to the black man, somehow were revolutionaries who wanted for the black man to be free. It's all propaganda, and they don't want for you to know what's true. They do not want for you to know what's true. And I know that that is why they're banning TikTok. I know that's why. Because TikTok allowed people to genuinely show exactly what is happening in front of them in a true and unfiltered way. I think if you've ever published content online or you've known someone who published content online, you've seen content being taken, twisted, and shifted to make a certain argument. You've probably experienced it directly. That is what our government is doing all the time. And yes, they are and have always been in bed with mainstream media. I think every website, TikTok included, has the possibility to contain misinformation. And I don't think that that is okay or is a non-issue. I think it's a very real issue that should be addressed. So it's a good thing that they're trying to address it. But let's not act like our education system isn't almost exclusively just misinformation. If you read about how America responded to the Holocaust, you would believe that America is so opposed to violence like that. You won't know that Hitler learned a lot of what he did to Jewish people from the United States, from their treatment of the indigenous folks and the black folks in this country. You're not going to know that America chose to intentionally not respond to the Holocaust until they could essentially use it for propaganda. The older I get, the more I appreciate the fact that my parents made a point of putting me in a good school. They made a point of sacrificing so that I could get an education, because your education is the thing I think that will keep you from being in situations where you don't see these things. Something that I've become so aware of after this election is just how much people work around the clock to propagandize people out of knowing the things that they need to know in order to protect themselves. That's the thing that breaks my heart the most. A lot of people are supporting Trump because they think that it's a pro-American thing to do, not understanding that Trump is going to be the end of America. And I wish I was being dramatic. But you know, the way that he's rubbing shoulders with these billionaires is very clearly a message that the future of our country is an oligarchy, right? And that is very concerning. Very, very concerning, because it means that America is no longer going to be America. That's really what it means. America, in the way that we have propagandized America to be, is no longer going to really exist. You know, you can paint it red, white, and blue, but that doesn't make it America. Just because it says that it's America and that it identifies as America doesn't mean that it actually is, right? Just because it's wearing red, white, and blue doesn't mean that it's actually America. That's the thing that makes me so sad, is at the core of this is a deeply anti-American sentiment. Some people think that it's, as Cenk Uygur likes to say, anti-establishment. No, it's actually anti-American. It's anti-everything that we have historically loved about America. I think the thing that people don't understand is the rest of the world is laughing at us. People are looking at what's happening in America right now and thinking, what the fuck is going on? And of course, this is all coinciding with far-right shit happening all around the world, but we are very clearly not as free as we like to describe ourselves to be. And I think some people are going to learn with time that they've never really been free. That from the day they were born, they were propagandized to believe in a version of this country that has quite literally never existed. And even in Donald Trump's Make America Great Again, he's hearkening back to a past that most of his followers would not actually be successful in. And the future of this country is not one where especially the white working class is going to be successful. That's the heartbreaking aspect of it. I'll never forget the first long conversation I had with a Trump voter. I was just giving a speech in Virginia, and I had a 2-hour ride with this Trump voter. And he was talking about how a lot of the factories had closed down, and kids are no longer working on the farms, they're going away to college, this and that, and Trump was going to bring all of that back. And it was heartbreaking because it was like, I don't know why you think a billionaire who already benefits from exporting labor because he gets to exploit it more would ever want to bring back, first of all, technology that we no longer use in a lot of cases, and factories that no longer really serve a purpose, just so that people can continue working the job that their grandpappy many decades ago was fond of. That part of our country is gone because rich people basically decided to export labor. That's what happened. And now we've elected those people and delusionally bought into the narrative that those people are going to bring it back. It's wild because I think it's a lot of stuff that if some of these people had educations, they would see. But they don't, because they don't often have educations. When I listen to so many Trump voters, I can see that there's a class of people who understand what's going on, and there's a class of people who don't. There's a class of people who want to take advantage of all the weird propaganda bullshit, and there's a class of people who they genuinely have bought into the propaganda, and it's too late. It is too late. I'm not going to relish those people fucking around and finding out. It's not going to be fun. I know that especially being in California and, making the income that I make, I'm probably not going to feel it for quite some time until I can't ignore it anymore. But some of Trump's base, they're going to feel it almost immediately. They are feeling it immediately. And I can't say I feel sorry for them, but I don't necessarily relish the fucking around and finding out. I'm not going to go and laugh in their face because it's sad. Too many people in this country have bought into this idea that their rights come from taking rights away from other people, or that when a law is passed, it's only going to affect certain people. It's not how it works. It's not how it's ever worked. But so many people are propagandized into believing that that's how it works. Why? Because people in power need for you to believe that. That's the thing that I wish more people were perceptive of. You're going to see positive portrayals of billionaires. You're going to see negative portrayals of people who go against those billionaires, because the billionaires are the ones who control the media. There's a reason why, again, he's on Joe Rogan wearing a chain, being chill like he's just one of us. Because at the end of the day, you need to buy into that propaganda in order to buy into the narrative that he's not exploiting you. here's the thing about a lot of the right-wing content creators, and I'm going to include Joe Rogan in this, even though I know he doesn't personally identify as one. A lot of those people are failed media folk, like Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin. A lot of these people are failed Hollywood rejects. Joe Rogan is not funny. Joe Rogan may have a cult of personality that people like, but his stand-up is not very funny. He may say things that people agree with. He may say things that people like, that resonate with him, but he's not very funny. A lot of these people like to throw shade at these other media types because it helps them sort of justify why things didn't quite work out for them. If they can believe that the media is just unfairly privileging people on the left, they can maybe buy into the idea that maybe the shit that they were trying to do was better than it actually was. When in reality, maybe you just fucking suck. Maybe you just fucking suck. And that's kind of why I bring up the money aspect of it, because a lot of people are great, but they don't get the funding to do it. A lot of people are incredibly fucking talented, but they're never going to get the reach or views of a Joe Rogan. And what I will give Joe Rogan is that he has worked incredibly hard creating what he's creating. It's not, I don't think Joe Rogan deserves the following. Let's not get it fucked up. But a lot of these people, it's not a surprise to me that you struggle to speak and present. It's really not. Because at the core of a lot of what I saw, a lot of the Elon Musk resentment of people who have verified pages, for example, that's you being frustrated that certain people got something that you don't qualify for. Ironically, what you want is something akin to DEI. It's aggravating because you have it. It's interesting listening to people talk about, certain narratives can't quite get out there when a lot of the narratives that you're sharing are just like mainstream narratives. This is not a complex thing that no one is saying. It is a very commonly stated thing that a lot of people feel. It's not counterculture. It's quite literally just you being part of the status quo. All right. Anyway, now that I'm done, I can finally go to the goth club. It is literally midnight, which is kind of the time I tend to arrive at the club anyway. Those of you guys who see me at the club every week, you know that. But yeah, I cannot wait to dance. I want you guys, if you have the opportunity to go out and dance and enjoy your body, please do. Please enjoy all of the moments that we have to still gather in public. Please, if you have the opportunity, really do enjoy it. And then also come together with all of your friends who like to dance and try to cultivate spaces for you guys to dance with each other. Like, community is so important right now, and that can mean so many different things. But long story short, I just want for people to start working on getting connections with people around them if they have the ability to, so that you guys are able to prepare for what may come. If it never comes, the worst thing that happens is you made a bunch of new friends. So I just want to end with a couple of different thoughts. I'm going to make a whole video about the TikTok ban. That is coming. That will be my next video that I post on here. But I want for you guys to really be aware of what's happening. I could be totally wrong about a lot of the things that I said in this video. I don't think that I am. Use how long I am able to speak on here as a good measurement of where we're at. Because I very honestly do feel like it will become harder and harder and harder for people like me to make content. That is the feeling that I have, because I have observed the way that conservatives have advocated against everything that I embody as a Black transgender woman. I know that there will be a push to define people like me as inherently pornographic and therefore not okay on social media. I've been on this app long enough to remember a time where a lot of LGBT content was indeed hit by censors. So it's not really that far out of the realm of possibility. And so I want for you guys to understand that I will continue to make content, whether it's overtly about politics or not. I have been making content online for most of my life. It is something that I enjoy immensely. It is a habit that I have. It's something that I frankly can't stop doing even between work. So it's something that I know I will always do. If you get to a point where you come on here and you see that I'm no longer posting and I have not made a video about it, or I haven't passed away, or, other things haven't happened, just know that I am being silenced. I've been on here long enough to know that I'm going to be stubborn about taking up space on here. I want to be wrong about this. I want to be wrong about the direction that I feel this country is going in, but I don't think I'm being dramatic. America could be better if our leaders wanted it to be. And what I'm frustrated seeing in this administration and a lot of the people that are hovering around the administration is that a lot of people want to cripple this country so that we become reliant on them. That is something that terrifies me, and it especially terrifies me that so many people voted for it. I want for people in my audience to stay hot and introspective. I want for you guys to be aware of what is going on. I don't necessarily want for you to be led by fear, but I want for you to be led with an awareness of what is. And I think the thing that's made so many aspects of our life so scary is that a lot of us bought into the propaganda. A lot of us bought into the narrative that our country isn't what it has always been. And when you are not aware, you're probably not going to see it. And they kind of rely on you not to see it so that they can continue doing what they're doing. There are people that sell us things that make us sick and then make a lot of money on selling us the cure. And it should concern you that so many of the people across the political spectrum who are trying to get TikTok banned have stake in Meta. This should all concern you, because at the end of the day, if you're somebody who believes that money corrupts politics, this is one of the most overt, outright, out loud, clear examples of that happening in a presidency ever. And I just want us to be aware. I don't want us to fall for the bullshit. Right now, what I want for people to do is to start really building community. And what I really mean when I say that is build a network of people who you can trust, who will have your back, who you will be willing to support and have their back. That might not be a lot of people, but I want for you to try to find a few. Because if our conversations on here are ones that we can no longer have, we're going to need ways to communicate with each other. And frankly, our over-reliance on websites like Facebook really do show that most of us have lost our pattern of doing this. We often forget that we didn't always have Facebook, that there were ways that we communed with each other. Something that I shared on my Facebook page the other day is that I would feel a lot better about deleting Meta if all of the people that I knew met up in the same place every month. And for some of us, we already have traditions like that, but a lot of us don't, right? A lot of us don't have the tradition of maintaining connection with the people that we know. So we rely on these websites in order to do it for us. And unfortunately, these websites do not care about us because, well, if we don't pay for it, we are what's for sale. The benefit that Meta presents to companies is the fact that so many of its free users can be sold. And so I just want for more people to be conscious of that and to be more aware of that and to think more thoughtfully when moving forward. I've sort of given up a lot of myself to be on social media, so I have slightly different feelings about me being on social media, but I know that when it comes to the way I am going to present myself on here, you guys are going to know less and less and less and less and less about the specifics of me because I need to keep that close to myself. And so I want for more people to start thinking about that and to start thinking about just how much you rely on the internet and how rough it's going to be for you if you ever end up in a situation where you cannot have access to it. Let's start to think about that right now before we no longer have the opportunity to. So I know that there was so much more to this. I only watched the first 50 minutes of this video. If enough of you really want me to, I will make a Patreon exclusive video where I watch the rest of it. Maybe I'll do my makeup again. I don't know. But I need to know that's something that you guys actually want. So please let me know on Patreon. Patreon is where you can find a lot of the content that I make behind the scenes where I'm sharing about my growth as a YouTuber and my different things that are going on behind the scenes. I have both personal videos that I make and videos specifically about work. So if that interests you, jump on over to Patreon. I want to give a big shout out to the last 3 people who jumped over and became members of my Patreon. Shout out to Emma Donnelly Burlington, Mimes, and Roxanne Styes. Thank you so much for joining my Patreon. I really appreciate all of the love and support I get over there. On that note, I will talk to you guys next time. And as per usual, I want you to remember and to never forget that you are beautiful and you are loved. Bye.